So I'm Robert Baird. I am now a consultant, but I did run an agency out of Toronto, Ontario, Canada for many, many years. I am Canadian, and did a lot of work in the United States, had a big agency, booked a lot of artists, and then eventually retired the agency and became a consultant, and now I help artists come into North America from other countries, into Canada and the United States.
And I know you said North America before. But just to clarify, North America, do you consider that to be Canada and the U.S. and Mexico, or only Canada and the U.S.?
Well, in my mind, it's Canada and the U.S., and yeah, Mexico's another story.
Okay.
Yeah,
very
sure.
Good. And so, for I envision that the majority of the people that will be viewing this series will likely be U.S. residents.
Right.
And looking at it, therefore, from the U.S. perspective, if an artist or an agent from the U.S. would like to go to a colder climate and enjoy the more gentle interactions of Canadians and perform in Canada, what do they need to do to make sure that they are legally meeting all necessary incoming requirements to perform in Canada?
So Canada is, I guess, in comparison to the United States, a more open country. We invite artists to come and perform in our country, and all they really basically need for that work is an invitation or a contract to work in Canada. And that's not, I mean, America and Canada have a very special relationship, but also other countries, if they are visa exempt for entry, then they can come and work in Canada. The only stipulations are that they cannot be in an employment relationship. So it's obviously in a concert situation. You're not. You're an independent artist. And you cannot usually work for more than 2 weeks without other regulations coming into effect.
Could you work for more than 2 weeks if you were, let's say, on a tour situation, so that you're not working for the same presenter for more than 2 weeks? You have a variety of presenters?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
We can have longer tours, absolutely. The crux of the matter is you can work in Canada quite easily. The question is, can you get into the country? Now, most Americans on an American passport would have absolutely no trouble. But if, say, you were an Indian person from India and you had an Indian passport, but you lived in the United States, you might need to have an entry visa to get into Canada. So that's the problem. You need the entry visa, and then you can work.
But if the group is exclusively
Not a
U.S.
problem.
citizens,
Not a
residents,
problem. Yeah.
not a problem.
Yeah, you can work quite easily. Yeah.
And then, what about taxation? Are there some requirements for paying taxes to Canada?
Well, obviously, every country wants to collect the taxes on income earned, and so just as the United States has a withholding requirement for foreign artists of 30%, Canada has a requirement of foreign artists of 15%. And to avoid that 15%, obviously you have to apply for what's called an R105 waiver. So you can get a waiver, just as in the United States you can apply for a waiver through the IRS, a central withholding agreement. So in Canada we have the same deal. And so if you wish not to be taxed, then you apply for the waiver.
And how complicated is this request for the waiver?
Well, like most requirements in government, it seems a simple thing. There's a form to fill out, but it's usually how you fill out the form and what information you provide with the form that will get you the waiver or not. And the Canadian situation has 2 levels. So you might be coming in as a group, and the group is getting paid a certain sum, and that sum might be tax-free. But the individuals in the group might be being paid a certain amount, which will trigger a tax situation. And for Canada, it's basically if you earn more than $5,000, then you're going to be taxed on that income over 5,000. Under 5,000, usually it's fine.
As an individual.
As an individual, yeah. So there are two levels of the withholding process, what they call the R105 for a group and the R102 for the individual. And they look at both things because when you file for a waiver, you have to disclose who you're paying, whether they're being paid as an employee, as a subcontractor. That's part of the application.
And as an R105 to a group,
Yeah.
if the group, let's say, is a quartet,
Right.
but they're not incorporated, they're not a
Non-incorporated,
501c3,
yeah, exactly.
they're just the such and such quartet.
Yeah. So basically, they look at what is the quartet being paid divided by 4.
Right.
So.
And
anyway,
even if
yeah.
the check is made out to the one member of
Yeah,
the quartet,
yeah.
it's safe because it's going to be distributed back out.
Exactly.
Okay.
And it probably won't trigger the tax. I mean, if the quartet's getting paid $10,000, they're each earning $2,500, so they're
Yeah.
fine. Yeah. Now, if they're getting paid $40,000, that's a different story. That'd be great.
And is that involve the total sum of during their one entry and departure out of Canada?
Well, when you have more than one tour in Canada, you have to disclose on the application how much in past tours. So it's an accumulated sum. It's annual. It's how much do you earn annually with all of these things?
Okay.
So that's the way.
So if they have multiple performances within the one tour,
That's
it's
fine.
how much it's the total
exactly. The
package.
total. Yeah,
Right.
exactly. Yeah, the
Okay.
total package. Yeah.
Any other things artists or agents should be aware of if they have not ever had the good fortune to have had an opportunity to perform in Canada? What advice would you have for them in terms of seeking
Sure.
those types of opportunities?
Yeah, well, seeking any performing opportunity is the same. You try to make connection with people who are booking artists, for example. So the best way to do that is to attend a conference. So Canada has provincial conferences that go on every year. And it has regional conferences that go on every year, and it has national conferences that go on every year. Much similar to what happens in the United States, but on a much smaller basis because we have 1/10 of the population of the US. And so people have to make that investment in coming to Canada, attending conferences, usually, again, over the long haul. So repeated attendance and hoping that they can make those connections to book in Canada. Once booked in Canada, there are several considerations. One is the money. Our money's worth less, 30% less than a US dollar at this point. So that's a factor.
Sure.
Canada is a different country. We have a different history, we have a different sense of who we are, how we behave. We are not as aggressive, if I can say that, as Americans. We're more laid back, we're more helpful, we're different people. And distances in Canada. Distances are great in Canada. We don't blink an eye at having to commute to a job 3 hours each way.
In one day?
In one day. It's a great country, great distances, and we travel by vehicle, great distances. To get across the province in which I live takes you 3 days from border to border. So if you come up to Canada, you have to probably drive yourself a lot, and B, drive yourself long distances. And so that's one thing that people have to know. I've had many artists say, I've got a job in Toronto, and then the next day I'm going to be in Thunder Bay. Is that possible? And I'm thinking, well, yeah, it's possible if you like driving like a lot and don't sleep. But you have to think when you're routing a tour, think of the distances involved, and the other thing is climate.
I was going to ask,
We're further
what
north,
about,
yeah.
What about
So
the weather?
we run the gamut. The southern part of the province in which I live is on the same level as Northern California in terms of latitude.
Ooh.
But then when you head north, of course, get don't get too far. You're on the same latitude as the Nordic countries, you know, and so we run the gamut, and we have bad weather in the wintertime, a lot of snow, and you got to know how to deal with that. You really do, in terms of dressing, travel, and you know, there's a factor in getting places. It just simply is. You know, it can get delayed, you can get snowed in, you can hit a storm, so you have to think about those things as well.
But now, there are cities and areas of the United States in our northern belt, if you will, where they have a certain reputation for their ability to have lots of snow trucks and clear the roads very quickly. And then there are others where they're not so good at it. Given that you all live with these weather conditions, how safe or how good, how well do they clean the roads when there is a big snow, or do you need to build in, listen, I may need to give myself 2 or 3 days leeway because we may get a snowstorm and I have to plan accordingly?
Well, we have the equipment and the budget to deal with those things, and so major routes are kept open. So unless you know, I mean, obviously it could be in the middle of a storm, they have to wait until it settles down but I remember living in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and we had snow one year, and it was literally a quarter of an inch of snow, and they shut down the city because no one knew how to deal with it, you know. It was unusual. And coming from Canada, where we deal with snow all the time, it was amusing, but, you know, understandable. And we deal with it. It's fine. Yeah, we can deal with that for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've heard it said that one of the considerations about constructing a tour in Canada, or selecting an artist to market into Canada, is that, and this may not be true, that there are a relatively large number, as a percentage, of venues and presenters that are of a very small size and operating budget, and that therefore, if you're looking at a group that requires a large fee by nature of their size or stature, you need to realize there'll be a much smaller percentage of presenters that would be capable of considering such a group.
That's true. Yeah, it is true. We don't have a lot of mid-sized venues. We have a lot of small venues. We have a few large venues, and so it's true. I mean, that narrows the market for a lot of acts. And you know, touring our provinces, for example, some of our western provinces, it just takes a lot. They don't pay very much. You might get a gig that will pay you less than $2,000. The only advantage, you'll make it up in merchandise sales because they love buying your CDs. And so I've had artistic groups very successfully, you know, touring Canada on that basis. But if you have a large group that requires a large fee, it's challenging. It's going to be a challenge for you, absolutely. Yep.
Well, so I have visited Canada several times, enjoyed it, but I really don't know anything about the performing arts market in Canada. So I'm going to give you an open-ended question. Any other things you would like to share with us about the performing arts in Canada?
Sure. I think the performing arts in Canada is very sensitive to what is successful in other countries. So they like artists who have had success south of the border, especially in the United States. And so I think there is an opportunity there for people who will make the effort to come up and make those connections to book their artists in Canada. But again, you know, you have to be prepared for adjusting fees, perhaps, dealing with how do I get from one end of the country to the other, going from major venue to major venue. But there have been many successful tours in Canada that have, made that effort. And I think that they have reaped the rewards of it, because not a lot of people will come to any country will come to another country and get to know how things work and get to know the major players. Canada's been very successful with block booking. We block book a lot in Ontario. We block book hundreds of performances every year, and there are major theaters that will cooperate to do that. So if you get an interest from one of the people in that block booking group, then you'll find that you're going to get, a lot of bookings. So it's a good thing to do.
That's excellent.
Yeah, and that's one thing to know. So find out, who's doing the block booking, get into that, and I think you'll be more successful in Canada.
And, sometimes certain countries, like Germany,
Right.
Some presenters and agents in Germany have said to me that they have a certain fascination with that which may be Native American and the cowboys.
Right.
With Canada, when you said they tend to reflect the performing, booking preferences or success of artists in other countries, is there anything in particular that might stand out? I mean, would they, if successful, would they be equally interested in, say, a country western music or a country music act versus a tribute show act versus a string quartet?
Yeah. It works. It's not limited. And I mean, obviously, Canada has its own cultural bias. Obviously, we have our own native population. A lot of focus is on that these days. And but no, I think that I know venues. There's a venue in North Bay, Ontario, which is several hundred miles north of Toronto, which loves country and western because it suits their clientele, it suits their venue. So you will find a venue that loves just about everything that takes place on stages that's in the United States. Anywhere in the world. We have a lot of festivals, a lot of fairs. We have the same mix. We have colleges, so that you can pretty much get into genres, areas for anything that you have to be booked.
And is there likely to be any slight shift in what people might wish to hear from Quebec as opposed to that area, as opposed to the rest of Canada?
That's a great question, because I was talking about that this morning with someone, and really Quebec, the whole thing about Quebec, it's like another country within our country, and they are very much European-centric. They have a different take on art, and I would probably say more sophisticated. The language is an issue, of course, the French language, and they focus more on that. And the Quebec government is so supportive of artists and agents, and it's a wonderful, wonderful part of the country. And it's like visiting another country, and it's quite different. But again, same thing. A lot of medium-sized and small presenters, a few large presenters, but they will take international acts into Quebec as well. And I think so you can, again, it's like two countries in one.
Well, thank you so much. This has been a wonderful opportunity to really learn and explore Canada with you.
Come to Canada. We'd love to have you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Manuel.
We look forward to seeing you there someday.
All right. Thanks.